There are moments that change everything. Moments where time slows down, where the world holds its breath, and where one choice can unravel a lifetime of lies. This is the story of a slap that never landed, and the secret it exposed. Her name was Elena Hart, 23 years old, a barista at a cafe most people walked past without noticing. She had soft eyes, the kind that saw too much, the kind that absorbed other people's pain without meaning to. Brown hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, hands stained with espresso, a name tag that was slightly crooked, no matter how many times she straightened it. She wasn't special. At least, that's what she told herself every morning when she looked in the mirror. She wasn't looking for trouble that morning. She never was. The cafe smelled like burned coffee and yesterday's pastries. The kind of place where regulars came for routine, not quality. Where the Wi-Fi was free and the conversations were forgettable. It was a Tuesday. Cold. Gray. The kind of November morning that felt like the city itself was half asleep. Outside, the world moved like it always did. Fast. Indifferent. Cold. Businessmen in tailored suits clutching their phones. Mothers pushing strollers with one hand, holding lattes with the other. Students with headphones in, eyes down, moving through life like ghosts. Elena stood behind the counter, wiping down the same spot she'd wiped 100 times before. Routine. Monotony. Safety. That's what her life had become. And she'd convinced herself she was okay with that. Then she heard the commotion. At first, it was just noise. Background static. The usual chaos of a busy cafe. But then a voice cut through. A child's voice. Small. Scared. "Please, I didn't mean to." Elena looked up. Near the entrance, a boy stood frozen. Maybe 8 years old. 9 at most. His shirt was wrinkled, hanging a little too loose on his small frame. His sneakers were worn down at the heels, the kind that had seen too many miles. He clutched a backpack to his chest like a shield. His eyes were wide, terrified. In front of him stood a man. Tall, over 6 feet. Broad shoulders wrapped in an expensive charcoal suit that probably cost more than Elena made in 3 months. His watch caught the light as he moved, glinting gold and arrogant. His hair was perfectly styled, graying at the temples in that distinguished way that powerful men wear like a badge. But his face was twisted with rage. Red and pulsing, veins visible at his temples. The boy had bumped into him. Just a clumsy accident, the kind that happens a dozen times a day in a crowded cafe. A paper cup lay on the floor between them. Coffee spreading across the tile in a dark, accusatory puddle. It was an accident. Anyone could see that. But the man didn't care. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" The man's voice was sharp, cutting through the cafe like broken glass. Each word deliberate, controlled, the kind of anger that comes from someone used to being obeyed. "This suit costs more than your mother makes in a year, you little." He stopped himself. Barely. The boy's lip trembled. Elena felt something tighten in her chest. A familiar ache, old and deep. She'd seen this before. The way powerful people treated the powerless. Like they were invisible. Like they were inconveniences. Like they were nothing. Around them, the cafe had gone quiet. Not silent, but muted. People were watching from behind their laptops and newspapers. Watching, but not moving. Not intervening. That's how it always was, wasn't it? Everyone watches. No one acts. The man took a step closer to the boy. The child tried to step back, but he was already pressed against the wall. Trapped. "I should make your parents pay for this," the man hissed. "Do you understand me? Your parents will." He raised his hand. Not a fist, but open, palm flat. A slap. And in that suspended second, Elena saw everything. She saw the boy flinch before contact, his small body curling inward, trying to make himself smaller. She saw the fear bloom in his eyes, pure and helpless. She saw the cafe full of people, all of them watching, all of them frozen, none of them moving. She saw the barista she worked with, looking away deliberately. She saw an older woman clutching her purse, mouth tight with disapproval but feet planted firmly in place. She saw a man in his 20s, headphones still in, pretending he couldn't hear. And she saw herself, years ago, smaller, quieter, helpless, standing in a different place, but the same moment, waiting for someone to help. And no one did. Her body moved before her mind caught up. 3 steps. That's all it took. She stepped between them. Her hand caught his wrist midair. Not roughly, not violently, but firm, certain. The cafe went silent. Truly silent this time. The man's eyes snapped to hers. For a moment, there was nothing but shock on his face. Pure, unfiltered disbelief. No one had touched him. No one had stopped him. Not in a very long time. The shock flickered and died, replaced by something colder. Fury. Who the hell do you think you are? His voice was low now. Dangerous. The kind of quiet that precedes storms. Elena didn't answer right away. She held his gaze, looked into eyes that were cold and entitled. Eyes that had never been told no. Eyes that expected the world to bend. Her heart was hammering. Her hands were shaking, but she didn't let go. Someone who's paying attention, she said quietly. The words came out steadier than she felt. The boy was still behind her. She could hear his breathing. Fast, shallow, terrified. The man yanked his wrist free. She let him. He straightened his suit jacket, adjusted his cufflinks. All those small, deliberate movements designed to reassert control. You just made a very big mistake, he said, his voice dripping with venom. A mistake you're going to regret. He didn't shout, didn't threaten openly, but Elena heard it anyway. The promise, the certainty. Then he turned and walked out. The door chimed softly as it closed behind him. Too cheerful, too ordinary, like the world hadn't just tilted on its axis. Elena exhaled. Her hands were shaking harder now. Adrenaline crashing through her system. The cafe slowly came back to life. Conversations resumed. Keyboards clicked. Life moved on, as if nothing had happened. The boy was still pressed against the wall, staring up at her. Thank you, he whispered. His voice was so small. Elena knelt down, bringing herself eye level with him. You okay? He nodded, but his eyes told a different story. They held a kind of hurt that went deeper than fear. The hurt of knowing the world could be cruel. That adults could be monsters. What's your name? She asked gently. Danny. Danny, that wasn't your fault. You know that, right? He nodded again, less certain this time. She walked him outside, waited with him on the sidewalk until his mother arrived. The woman was frazzled, apologetic, grateful. She hugged Danny tight, asked if he was okay, thanked Elena 3 times in 30 seconds. She didn't ask questions. She didn't have time. Elena watched them disappear into the crowd. Mother and son, swallowed by the city. And for a moment, she felt good. Like maybe she'd done something that mattered. Like maybe she was more than just a barista nobody noticed. But that feeling didn't last long. Because 3 hours later, her manager called her into the back office. His face was pale, hands fidgeting. Elena, I'm sorry. I have to let you go. The words didn't make sense at first. She blinked. What? That man you stopped. He made a call. Corporate called me. They said, he swallowed hard. They said it's out of my hands. Her stomach dropped. I stopped him from hitting a child. I know. But the manager hesitated, looking genuinely pained. He's connected. Very connected. I can't fight this. They told me if I don't fire you, they'll replace me too. The room felt smaller suddenly. So that's it. He couldn't meet her eyes. I'm sorry. 20 minutes later, Elena walked out of that cafe with a cardboard box in her hands and a sick feeling in her gut. One moment of doing the right thing. And it cost her everything. But Elena didn't know yet. She didn't know who that man really was. Or how far his reach extended. She didn't know that stopping that slap had set something in motion. Something she couldn't take back. Something that would change everything. The phone call came 2 days later. 2 days of sitting in her apartment, staring at her bank account, watching the numbers that didn't add up. 2 days of silence that felt heavier than noise. 2 days of wondering if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. Unknown number. Elena almost didn't answer. Her thumb hovered over the decline button. She'd been getting calls. Debt collectors who somehow already knew she'd lost her job. Scammers. Wrong numbers. But something told her to pick up. She pressed accept. Elena Hart. The voice was calm. Professional. Female. The kind of voice that belonged to someone who asked hard questions for a living. Yes. My name is Joanna Reeves. I'm an investigative journalist with the Metropolitan Post. I'd like to talk to you about Marcus Hale. Elena's heart skipped. The name landed like a stone in still water. Creating ripples. Disturbing everything. Who? Even as she said it, she knew she was lying. Badly. The man you stopped from hitting a child 2 days ago. Marcus Hale. Billionaire. CEO of Hale Industries. Real estate. Tech investments. Political connections. One of the most powerful men in the country. Silence. Elena sat down slowly on her worn couch. The springs creaked beneath her. Outside, the city hummed. Cars honking. Sirens in the distance. Life continuing, indifferent to the fact that her world had just tilted again. Why are you calling me? Because you're not the first person he's hurt. But you might be the first person brave enough to stand up to him. Brave. The word felt foreign. Wrong. Elena's hand tightened around the phone. I didn't stand up to anyone. I just stopped him from hitting a kid. Exactly, Joanna said. And now he's coming after you. Isn't he? The question hung in the air. Elena thought about the job she'd lost. The way her manager had looked at her, apologetic but powerless. The rent she couldn't pay. The whispers she'd started hearing in her building. Her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, asking if everything was okay. The superintendent mentioning something about complaints, though he wouldn't say what kind. Little things. Subtle things. The kind of pressure that builds slowly until you can't breathe. How do you know that? Elena asked quietly. Because that's what he does. He punishes people who embarrass him. He erases them. Quietly. Efficiently. Until they wish they'd never crossed his path. A chill ran down Elena's spine. She pulled her knees up to her chest. Made herself smaller on the couch. What do you want from me? Joanna's voice softened slightly. Just enough to sound human. I want to tell your story. But more than that, I want your help exposing his. Elena closed her eyes. She wanted to say no. She wanted to hang up. She wanted to crawl into bed and pretend none of this had happened. Pretend she'd looked away like everyone else. But she couldn't unsee that boy's face. Danny. His trembling lip. His small voice. The way he'd tried to make himself invisible against that wall. What kind of story? She asked. Joanna exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath. Marcus Hale isn't just a businessman. He's a predator. For years, he's abused his power. Intimidated employees. Harassed women. Silenced accusers with NDAs and payoffs. Destroyed anyone who got in his way. He's built an empire on fear and money and connections that run so deep, they're practically roots. Elena's mouth went dry. Then why hasn't anyone stopped him? Because he's untouchable. He owns judges. He has lawyers on retainer who specialize in making problems disappear. He's donated to every major political campaign in this state. He controls media outlets. When someone tries to speak out, he buries them. Financially, professionally, personally. Then why would I be any different? The question came out smaller than Elena intended. Because you didn't ask for anything. You didn't threaten him. You didn't want money or fame or revenge. You just did what was right. And that terrifies him. Because people like him can't control people like you. They can't buy you. They can't predict you. Elena didn't feel brave. She felt small. And scared. And completely out of her depth. What if I say no? Then he wins. Again. Like he always does. The line went quiet. Elena stared out her window. The city stretched out below her, glittering and indifferent. Millions of people living their lives, unaware that somewhere in one of those towers, a man with unlimited power was systematically destroying anyone who challenged him. Somewhere out there, Marcus Hale was living his life. Untouched, unafraid, unpunished. And somewhere out there, Danny was probably still scared. Still believing that the world was a place where powerful men could do whatever they wanted. What do I have to do? Elena asked. She met Joanna in a diner on the edge of town. Quiet, out of the way. The kind of place with vinyl booths and checkered floors and a waitress who'd stopped caring about customer service sometime in the 90s. Joanna was older than she sounded on the phone. Mid-40s, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Tired, but determined. The kind of tired that came from years of fighting battles most people didn't know existed. She wore a gray blazer and jeans. No makeup. Hair pulled back in a practical bun. She looked like someone who'd stopped trying to impress people a long time ago. Elena slid into the booth across from her. Joanna didn't waste time on pleasantries. She slid a folder across the table. Thick, worn at the edges, heavy with secrets. These are testimonies. From people who worked for Hale. People he threatened. People he broke. Some of them are willing to talk off the record. None of them will go public. Elena opened it slowly. Inside were pages and pages. Printed emails. Handwritten notes. Photographs. Legal documents with sections blacked out. And faces. A woman in her 30s, professional headshot, smiling. Beneath it, a note. Sarah Mitchell. Former VP of Marketing. Fired after rejecting Hale's advances. Blacklisted from the industry. Now works retail. Asterisk. A man in his 50s. David Chen. Whistleblower. Tried to report financial irregularities. Lawsuit dismissed. Career destroyed. Declared bankruptcy 2019. Asterisk. A younger woman. College age. Rebecca Torres. Intern. Harassment complaint filed. Settled with NDA. Dropped out of school. Whereabouts unknown. Asterisk. Story after story. Face after face. Pain after pain. Elena's hands shook as she turned the pages. Why haven't you published this? Because I need corroboration. I need someone willing to go on record. Someone he can't silence with money or threats or legal loopholes. Someone whose story is clean, unambiguous, undeniable. Joanna leaned forward. Someone like you. Elena looked up. You think that's me? I think you're the only person who's stood up to him in public and lived to tell about it. Lived. The word hung in the air like smoke. Elena's coffee had gone cold. She hadn't touched it. Is that a figure of speech? Joanna's expression darkened. She removed her glasses, rubbed the bridge of her nose. 2 years ago, a woman named Claudia Ross tried to sue him for sexual harassment. She was an executive at one of his companies. Smart, credible. She had evidence, text messages, witnesses, recordings, a strong case. What happened? She disappeared, filed the lawsuit on a Monday. By Friday, she dropped it, left the state, changed her number, deleted all her social media. No one's seen her since. Elena's blood ran cold. The diner suddenly felt too bright, too exposed. You think I think powerful men don't like being challenged. I think they have resources we can't imagine. I think Claudia Ross got scared. Or paid off. Or threatened. Maybe all three. Joanna put her glasses back on. Met Elena's eyes directly. I've been investigating Marcus Hale for 3 years. I've talked to dozens of people. Collected hundreds of pages of evidence. But every time I get close, something happens. Witnesses recant. Documents disappear. Sources stop returning my calls. Then why keep trying? Because someone has to. Because if people like us don't stand up to people like him, then what's the point of any of this? She gestured vaguely at the world outside the diner window. Elena pushed the folder back across the table. Her heart was racing. Her palms were sweating. I can't do this. I'm just a barista. I'm nobody. I don't have money for lawyers. I don't have connections. I barely have read money. I'm exactly the kind of person he destroys. That's exactly why you can do this. That doesn't make any sense. Joanna's voice softened. Elena, people like Marcus Hale. They're used to fighting other rich people. Other powerful people. They know how that game works. Lawyers, settlements, backroom deals. But you're not playing that game. You're just a person who saw something wrong and stopped it. That simplicity is your power. It doesn't feel like power. It feels like suicide. Maybe. But what's the alternative? You spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering when he's going to finish destroying you. Because he will. Men like him don't stop. They can't. Their entire identity is built on being untouchable. Elena stared at the folder. All those faces. All those stories. All those people who'd been brave once. Who'd spoken up. Who'd paid the price. If I do this, Elena said slowly, what happens to me? Joanna didn't sugarcoat it. He'll come after you. Hard. He'll dig into your past. Every mistake you've ever made. Every embarrassing moment. Every secret. He'll try to destroy your credibility. Make you look unstable, or vindictive, or attention-seeking. He'll make your life hell. And if I don't, then nothing changes. And the next person who stands up to him might not be as lucky as you. Might not just lose their job. Might lose everything. Elena sat back. The diner smelled like grease and old coffee. A TV in the corner played the news on mute. Somewhere, a cook shouted an order. Normal. Mundane. Safe. She thought about her life. Her small apartment. Her simple routines. The invisibility she'd cultivated. The safety of being nobody. And she thought about Danny. About the way he'd looked at her afterward. Like she was a hero. Like good people existed. Like someone would stand up. She thought about all the times she'd looked away. All the moments she'd stayed silent. All the injustices she'd swallowed because it was easier. Safer. All the times she'd been the person in the cafe, watching but not moving. Her hands were shaking again. But this time, it wasn't just fear. It was rage. Pure. Clean. Clarifying. She pulled the folder back toward her. Tell me what to do. Joanna's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Relief, maybe. Or respect. First, we document everything. Every interaction you've had with him. Every consequence you've faced. We build a timeline, a narrative. Then what? Then we go public. We publish your story. And we hope it's enough to make other people brave. Elena swallowed hard. And if it's not, then at least we tried. At least we didn't let him win without a fight. Elena nodded slowly. Her coffee was still cold. She drank it anyway. She needed something to steady her hands. Because she'd just agreed to go to war with a billionaire. And deep down, she knew that one of them wasn't going to survive this. She just hoped it would be him. The article went live on a Tuesday morning. Elena didn't sleep the night before. She sat at her laptop in her small apartment, the blue light washing over her face in the darkness. Refreshing the page, watching the numbers tick upward. Views, shares, comments flooding in faster than she could read them. The headline was simple, direct, devastating. Billionaire Marcus Hale, a legacy of abuse and silence. Her name was in it. Her face. A photo Joanna had taken of her in that same diner where they'd first met. Elena looked small in the picture. Ordinary. Real. Beneath it, her story. The cafe. The boy. The slap that never landed. The job she'd lost. The quiet, systematic way Marcus Hale had tried to erase her. And beneath that, dozens of other stories. Sarah Mitchell. David Chen. Rebecca Torres. Names that had been hidden. Faces that had been forgotten. Voices that had been silenced. All of them speaking now. All of them saying the same thing. Enough. By noon, it had gone viral. Elena watched it spread across social media like wildfire. People she'd never met were sharing it. Discussing it. Debating it. Some believed her. Some didn't. Some said she was brave. Others said she was foolish. Attention-seeking. A liar. The comments section was a war zone. But the story was out there now. In the world. Beyond her control. By evening, the news networks picked it up. Cable news, local stations, national broadcasts. Elena's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, producers, strangers wanting interviews, wanting her story, wanting a piece of the narrative. She ignored most of them. But not all of them. By midnight, Marcus Hale's lawyers released a statement. Elena read it on her phone, sitting on her couch in the dark. The language was sharp, clinical, aggressive. Mr. Hale categorically denies these baseless allegations. This is a transparent attempt at character assassination by individuals seeking financial gain and media attention. Mr. Hale has built his reputation on integrity and excellence, and he will vigorously defend himself against these malicious lies. Legal action is being pursued against all parties involved in this defamatory publication. Defamatory, malicious, baseless. The words were designed to intimidate, to threaten, to make her back down. 3 months ago, they would have worked. 3 months ago, Elena would have deleted everything. Apologized. Disappeared. But something had changed. She'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. And on the other side of that line, she'd found something she didn't know she had. Herself. She read the statement again. Then she set her phone down. And she waited. The threats started the next day. Not from Hale's lawyers. Those would come later, formal and legal and terrifying in their precision. These were different. Anonymous messages on social media. Emails to addresses she'd never given out. Comments on the article that went beyond disagreement into something darker. You're going to regret this. People like you don't win. I know where you live. Be careful walking alone at night. Elena blocked the accounts. Deleted the messages. Reported the worst ones. But they kept coming. New accounts. New threats. The same message underneath them all. Shut up. Disappear. Or else. She stopped sleeping well. Every sound in the hallway made her jump. Every unknown number made her heart race. Every shadow outside her window looked like a person. Joanna called every day, checking in, making sure she was okay. Reminding her that this was normal. Expected. Part of the process. They're trying to scare you, Joanna said. That's all this is. Intimidation. It's working, Elena admitted. I know. But you're still here. You're still standing. That means you're winning. It didn't feel like winning. It felt like drowning. But Elena kept going. She gave interviews. Told her story over and over until the words felt scripted. Robotic. Like they'd happened to someone else. She answered questions. Defended herself. Explained that she didn't want money. Didn't want fame. Just wanted accountability. Most people believed her. Some didn't. But the story kept growing. 3 weeks later, the first charges were filed. Not by Elena. By a woman named Jennifer Caruso. Former employee of Hale Industries. She'd seen the article, read the stories, recognized her own experience in them. And she found her courage. She filed a formal complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Sexual harassment, hostile work environment, retaliation, The news broke on a Friday. By Monday, 2 more women had come forward. Then 5. Then 12. One by one, they emerged from the shadows. Women who'd been silent for years. Women who'd signed NDAs. Women who'd been paid off. Women who'd been threatened. Women who saw Elena's story and realized they weren't alone. The dam had broken, and Marcus Hale's carefully constructed empire began to crack. It didn't happen overnight. There were hearings, depositions, delays, legal battles that stretched on for months. Hale's lawyers were good, the best money could buy. They fought every allegation, challenged every witness, attacked every credibility. They tried to paint Elena as unstable, bitter, a failed barista with an axe to grind. They dug into her past, found a DUI from when she was 19, an ex-boyfriend who said she was dramatic, a former employer who said she was difficult. They tried to destroy her the way they'd destroyed everyone else. But this time, something was different. This time, people were watching. This time, the world cared. The media coverage was relentless. Daily updates, expert analysis, public opinion shifting like tides. Corporations that did business with Hale Industries started quietly distancing themselves. Board members resigned. Investors pulled funding. The cracks became fissures. The fissures became chasms. And eventually, the truth came out. Not all of it. Not everything. Men like Marcus Hale were too careful for that. But enough. Enough to matter. Enough to prove what everyone already knew but couldn't say. That he'd abused his power. That he'd hurt people. That he'd built his empire on fear and silence and the belief that he was untouchable. Marcus Hale was arrested on a Thursday afternoon in late March. 6 months after Elena had stopped that slap. Elena watched it on the news from her apartment. The same apartment she'd been too scared to leave for weeks. The same couch where she'd read death threats and cried and wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. She watched him walk out of his building in handcuffs. His face was blank, controlled. Even now, even in this moment, he wore his power like armor. But the armor was cracking. She could see it in his eyes. The disbelief, the rage, the incomprehension that this was happening to him. That someone had actually held him accountable. That someone like Elena, nobody important, nobody powerful, had been the one to bring him down. She didn't feel triumphant. She didn't pump her fist or smile or celebrate. She just felt tired, bone deep, soul-crushing tired. But also lighter, like she'd been carrying something heavy for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. She turned off the TV, sat in the silence of her apartment, and for the first time in months, she breathed. 6 months later, Elena got a letter. It arrived on a Tuesday. Plain white envelope, no return address. She almost threw it away. She'd gotten so much mail. Fan letters, hate mail, legal documents, requests for interviews she'd long stopped answering. But something made her open this one. Inside was a single piece of notebook paper. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, like someone had taken their time. Dear Elena, I don't know if you'll remember us. My son Danny and I. We were in the cafe that day. The day you stopped that man from hurting my boy. I never got to thank you properly. Everything happened so fast. I was so scared and confused. I just wanted to get Danny out of there. But I want you to know what you did for us that day. And what you've done since. Danny still talks about you. He asks if you're okay. He asks if you're safe. When he saw you on the news, he said, that's her. That's the lady who helped me. You showed him that good people exist. That someone will stand up. That the world isn't just bullies and cowards. I'll never forget that. Neither will he. Thank you for being brave when the rest of us weren't. We're rooting for you. Always. It wasn't signed, but Elena knew who it was from. She read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully, placed it in a drawer beside her bed. And for the first time in months, she smiled. A real smile. Not for the cameras, not for the interviews, not for the story, just for herself. There are moments that change everything. Moments where you have a choice. To look away, or to step forward, to stay silent, or to speak, to be safe, or to be brave. Elena chose to speak, and in doing so, she didn't just expose a billionaire's darkest secret. She reclaimed her own power. Not because she was fearless, but because she was afraid and did it anyway. Not because she was strong, but because she was broken and stood up anyway. Not because she knew she would win, but because she knew staying silent would destroy her more than fighting ever could. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop a slap, and refuse to let the world tell you it didn't matter. Because it did. It always does. Every act of courage, no matter how small, creates ripples. Ripples that become waves. Waves that change everything. So let me ask you something. What would you have done in that cafe? Would you have stepped forward? Or would you have looked away? Would you have spoken up? Or stayed silent? It's easy to think we'd be brave. To imagine ourselves as heroes in someone else's story. But the truth is, most of us are the people watching. Waiting. Hoping someone else will act. Until one day, we can't watch anymore. One day, the cost of silence becomes greater than the risk of speaking. And that's when everything changes. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you that one person can make a difference, then share it. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's afraid to speak up. Someone who thinks they're too small to matter. Because Elena was nobody. Just a barista. Just a person. Just someone who decided that watching wasn't enough. And that decision changed everything. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. Stories about real courage, real choices, real people who refuse to look away. Hit that notification bell, because the world needs more people like Elena. And maybe, just maybe, you're one of them. You just don't know it yet.